welcome back to my channel. It's Jedimanda here, and today is part 2 of my Kitana Mortal Kombat making series. We're going to talk about the outfit today. If you would like links to the other videos, please check out the description below. That's where they'll be posted. Now before we get started, just like I said in my video last week, I magically deleted some portions of making this outfit. The video content's just gone. It just went bye-bye. I don't know what happened, I don't know where it went, but I have no video footage for the draft and mock-up stage of this bodice. But I do have a lot of video footage of the finishing of the bodice and the rest of my stuff. So all the armor, that is on here. Okay, first things first. This is not the first thing first. The first thing first is the suit. Before we get into the bulk of this video, I just want to mention that there will be timestamps below in the description for several aspects of this video. Within it, I do talk a lot about the bodice, separate from the armor bits, separate from the boots. So if you're here to learn all about this whole outfit, the timestamps to learn about each one of those sections will be below in the description just for you guys. Because this is a pretty long video and I do apologize, but hey, this is a long build. Let me go get that because I completely forgot to get that. Okay, the suit. This is kind of an undersuit, more or less to say, because the actual outfit has a bodice and the pants, more or less. But I don't think it's pants in the game. I think it's actually a suit and this goes on top of it. Trust me, don't make pants, they'll just fall down. That was my mistake with Captain Marvel. Should have made it all one suit. You live, you learn. Here is a quick look at what the suit looks like. Kind of hard to see, but as you can see in the photo next to me in the video, it is a suit. To make the suit, I used a pattern. You don't have to use a pattern for this, but I would suggest it because it's a good way to start. I used specifically this McCall's pattern, 7793, the Yaya Han, one of her suit patterns, for this because it was a simple center seam, back seam, front or right side and left side patterns because you will be altering this a whole lot. First, I made a mock-up, drew out the sections on the mock-up that I knew would be different colors, cut out the mock-up, add seam allowance to the new pattern pieces, and remade the suit again with the fabric that I needed. The good thing is it's a 4-way stretch. It gives a little bit, or not a little bit, a lot of bit. So if your pattern is not specifically up to your size, the fabric will kind of make in that ease a little bit. The fabric that I used for this is a 4-way stretch. Make sure it's all 4-way stretch. Trust me, no 2-way, no 3-way, no anything. 4-way stretches, guys. Suits need to be that. You'll thank me later. I used the Ultra Preen Blue 4-way stretch from Joann's that I later painted that I will talk about in this video. And also a vinyl 4-way stretch spandex, also from Joann's. I think both of them are in the cosplay section at Joann's Fabrics for this suit, as well as this that I will talk about in a little bit. Once I had all the pieces together and made the suit, I added a zipper in the back, and I will say go ahead, I did make some alterations to the design that's from the game into this outfit just because I know my body I don't like open back stuff, and I know in the game it's an open back, and I know in the game she doesn't have a cape, but I put a cape on because I like capes. So my design is a little bit different from the in-game Kitana, but that's okay. So once your undersuit is made, put that aside. Let's start with the bodice. I just want to go ahead and say this is one of my favorite things I've ever made. I love the way this bodice looks. It's very clean. I used all leather for this, and it was my first time using leather in a cosplay, actually. I've never made anything out of leather. Maybe some here and there belts and pockets and shoes or whatever, but never like a full outfit. And honestly, leather is one of my favorite materials to use now for cosplay. Now to add for the lack of video content for this, the first thing I did was pad out my dress form to my shape and size, and I wrapped it in plastic. This is a very common method that a lot of foam smiths use to make armor, and it's a very easy method to use for a lot of sewing stuff too. The only problem is that it's very tight, so you want to mentally think about adding in a little more seam allowance when you are cutting and making this stuff out of fabric than not adding any seam allowance at all, which is sometimes what foam smiths do. Not too sure, not one. Once I wrapped it in plastic, I put masking tape on it, and then I drew out this crazy design as best as I could. I highly suggest getting separate Sharpie colors so you know what pieces are what. As you can see in the video, I had them marked and numbered and color-coded because this thing is crazy. Look at that. Look at all these crazy lines. It's beautiful. So once I had the pattern pieces out of the masking tape plastic thing, I transferred them to paper to make it easier to transfer onto leather. But before I cut out leather, I made a mock-up. Please make a mock-up. I used muslin. You can use any kind of cotton fabric. I would not suggest any fabric with a stretch when you make a muslin, unless you're making something with stretch. But for this case, no stretch in the muslin. Once I had the muslin mock-up made, fitted it to myself, fitted it to my bodice, I was good. Let's go ahead and cut it out of the leather. The specific leather that I used for this was a traditional cow hide for the blue. I'm not too sure. The blue is, we're just gonna say the blue's leather. And the black is, I wanna say pigskin? Not pigskin. I need some more research on that, but I'll have the link below exactly what types of leather these are if you really want to know. But they're thin. They're not really thick leather like you would make belts or anything out of because it needs to conform to your body. It needs to move. So once your mock-up is done, let's cut out the leather. Using a sharp craft knife, I suggest the Alpha craft knives, insert sponsorship ding, to cut the leather. And don't forget to add your seam allowance. The good thing about leather is that there is no grain. So you can, unlike, you know, cutting out fabric, you have to adhere to grain or anything. With leather, you can just lay out the leather and you can move the pattern pieces all along where they need to be so that everything fits well. So you don't have a lot of waste. That's another thing I love about leather, is that there's really not that much waste if you move the pattern pieces around enough. And the waste can be used for other things. Leather's cool. But totally, I want to go ahead and say, if you don't want to use real leather for reasons, whatever, you can use faux leather or you can use another type of fabric. Just make sure it's really strong. I wouldn't suggest using a 4-way stretch or any kind of stretch for the bodice because to get that real sculpted look in the game, I actually added steel bones into the side to make it feel kind of like a corset to me. Like I said, you can do anything, but if you want it to be a very structured bodice look, don't use anything with a stretch. Find fabric or use leather and then insert bones into the channels. I actually ended up using the muslin as the lining for this. I flat lined it to the leather pieces once I was done cutting them out. Then I just put it together. From here on out, it's gonna be kind of hey, put things together and see if they work by trying them on and taking them off. There's not much of a cosplay tutorial, this is exactly how you do everything. This is just kind of me showing you how I made it. One specific thing I do want to mention is that this section right here on Kitana's bodice was a bit different. In game, it has a little bit of a texture, so I found some netting in my stash, painted it black, and then flatlined it to this specific part of the fabric of the leather. So from here on out you see the riveting in the back part of Kitana for the corset. It's pretty much just trial and error. Once I had this portion done of the bodice, I added the corset back grommets, to make this a corset back, and then I started working on this top section. So let's go to some voiceover for the rest of the build.
Okay, so let's talk more about this build now with video. Right here, I'm just showing you how I put in, grommets for the corset back, and also that I put steel boning in all over this bodice. You don't have to do that, but if you want it to keep its structure, you'll need it. Right here, I'm showing you how I patterned this weird neck M piece that the game has on my dress form. It was a pretty simple piece, just lay it out and draw it where you see fit and cut it out of, you know, leather, like this whole build is. And right here, I'm continuing to pattern out the shoulder pieces that will be underneath the armor for the shoulder, as well as the back, neck, and the back portions. now I'm placing this weird triangle that is also in the design that looks like a different type of fabric, but ultimately I ended up choosing just regular leather and painting it differently for that spot, but it is a little top stitch piece down. But I'm just going ahead and showing you the entire back and how I did that following the seam lines that were in the design. And also the center back neck is a Velcro closure, just for funsies. Okay, so now we're starting to pattern out the armor. The bodice is done. Now it's time to put the silver armor pieces. I started with the shoulders first. Pretty simple. I put some paper on my dress form shoulders and just patted out or marked out where I think the armor looks like it would be. You can do several different types of patterning for this. This is just kind of how I thought about it on the whim, and it worked out pretty good. Once I had the pattern established, I went ahead and cut it out of paper and then I cut the paper out and then I cut it out of foam. I want to believe 4mm foam for this. I think for the majority of all of the foam for this piece. And then I hot glued it together, which I don't suggest. I suggest using contact cement, but I had hot glue and that's all I had for what I needed it to do. I beveled the edges so I made that awesome point. Okay. Now we need to talk about something because I made a realization halfway through this build that I didn't quite like something and I wanted to change it. But I'm going to go ahead and tell myself to stop. Stop, Amanda. Here's the problem. At this part during the build, I decided that the blue spandex on my undersuit wasn't the color I wanted, so I was going to paint it. Instead of taking it all apart and just getting a different fabric, painting was what I thought would have been a good idea, and it really wasn't, because what happened was the paint, as you can see on the right arm, right there, started to peel off. That's because I used the wrong paint for this. I used a fabric medium with regular acrylic paint. I do not suggest doing that. If you want to paint on this type of spandex, please use Angelus leather paint. Even though the Angelus leather paint still came up on my high action areas, it worked for the rest of the bodice. All right, let's continue going in. It worked for the rest of the undersuit, not the bodice. Okay, back to the stuff that actually worked, which is the armor. I loved the way this armor looked. It looked so cool. So right here, I am mapping out all the little details on the armor points of the shoulders. Once I had those designed, now I went ahead and did the silver hip armor pieces. This is so weird. MK outfits are odd. That I used out of foam and foam clay. They're kind of at an angle, so the foam clay is meant to kind of pop off of the body and kind of flare out. This worked, however, my foam clay got really, really, really dry and cracked a lot, so I wouldn't suggest use the foam clay around high action areas like your hips or anything. I would suggest using foam clay for like detailed points and stuff like that. But it worked in a pinch, and that's just kind of what I had to use. So once the foam clay dried, I went ahead and applied it to the bodice using contact cement. Well, after I painted it, and then put it to the bodice using contact cement. Right now, I am patterning the little silver medallion that's in the center of the chest of the bodice and seeing what I could use from that. I actually had a good friend, Alex, make it out of 3D printing, but it ended up being too small. So I had to make it out of foam clay, which was fine. Just really not detailed with foam clay. I'm not really confident on foam clay yet. I need some more practice with it, but it works in a pinch. And so I ended up just carving a much bigger version of the smaller version out of foam clay for the center of that piece. Okay, so my foam clay dried for my hip pieces. Right now I'm just taking a Dremel and making it smooth so it will lay along my body nice and smooth. Here is one cool thing about foam clay. When it dries, it is extremely easy to carve into, just like foam. Obviously, it's foam clay. So I made these little pieces out of the foam clay, and let them dry so I can cut them in half so I can have these very, very fine points that would go at the edge of the hip armor pieces. I ended up loving the way this looked. However, over time on my bodice, it ended up cracking and I had to glue them back several times. But they do look really cool and I do advise using that. I really love getting sharp points with this foam clay. Once I had everything sanded down to the correct size and dimension and looks that I wanted, I took some quick seal and filled in all of the gaps that the foam clay and the foam was making. And this is one of my favorite small tips about foam. Foam armor making is this quick seal. It has saved my butt so many times on really collecting into those gaps and making everything look really smooth like, you know, it was supposed to be. Fun tip when using the quick seal, dip your finger in some water when you are using it to help smooth it out onto the foam. Okay, I had all of the bodice armor pieces done and got all of my foam clay nice and dremeled out and smoothed and covered in Plasti Dip. And now I'm ready to paint. Please seal your foam before you paint. Right here, I'm just showing you the colors that I used for all of the paint for this entire build, which pretty much was just exclusively the plaid brushed metal. Oh, and one little folk art of white, the plaid brushed metal silvers paint, acrylic paint. Great stuff. Love it. I use this quite a lot in my builds. So it's painting time. I used about 2 layers of the silver in various silver colors. I think I have a pale silver, regular silver, a darker silver, and like a brushed black. I think those are the actual colors that I used. And I just had a little fun with it right here. I made a base coat of a silver, and then I took the highlight and the shadow paints and just kind of went to town. Had a good time with painting them to what I think it looked like from the game, as well as just kind of doing what I wanted, which is highlighting and using the paints in a lot of shadows to make it really pop. Fun tip when doing highlighting and painting, use the starkest white you can find to really hit those tips of the piece that you're painting to make them stand out. If you have really bright colors against really dark colors, that makes those edges stand out a whole lot more and will make them look like they're highlighted. And so right here you can see I'm just hitting those really fine edges of the centerpiece with white to make them stand out a little bit better. Okay, fun shout out here. I am using the Cosbond costume adhesive stuff to put the front center medallion on my bodice. This is basically super powerful double-sided tape. I love the Cosbond products. They really help me in a pinch with adhering anything to any cosplay, and they come in sheets, which is super nice instead of like on a roll. So you can draw out the exact size you need for the tape that you're going to be using. And like I said, this is what I used to attach the medallion, and it still has not come off my center of the bodice. And this is foam that's being attached to leather, and it worked perfectly. I highly recommend getting some of their products for your cosplay building. There is a link below in the description for their website if you would like to snatch some and tell them I sent you. Okay, for here on till I get to putting the shoulders on the bodice, it's pretty much just me painting and showing you how I weathered and gave it some highlight and shadows on these pieces, so you can do that to your own, as well as, you know, applying these techniques to any other foam painting job that you have. So enjoy watching me paint. Okay, so now it's time to apply the shoulder pieces to the bodice. I used contact cement to get the foam to adhere to the leather, and I anchored it down with some shoestring to, make the points, because those points on the shoulders tend to pop up a little bit since they're small. So I used some tape to, not like actual tape, but like shoestring actually, to pin into my dress form and for me to hold it down overnight without me actually being there and physically holding it. So it gets a nice smooth contact and a good 24-hour cure. And right now I'm adding in little bits that I completely forgot about, which was just little silver triangles that go in the middle. And once everything was glued, I tried on the bodice and it looked so perfect. I love the way it looked. Whoops, the back is not completely closed, but that's okay. You must try on stuff as you're going through this cosplay making progress, because you never know what you need to fix until it's on, right? Awesome. Moving on. Now I think we're going to the wrist armor. And just like the shoulder and everything else that I did, I drew it out small first and then made it bigger from images from the game. Once I had the design all drawn out and knowing what I was doing, I went ahead and scaled it up to my actual arm measurements and prepared the pattern for foam time. Once the wrist armor was patterned, I went ahead and started patterning the knee, which is really more difficult than it should be, but trial and error. And once I got the knee look that I wanted to do, I went ahead and drew out my design that I knew I was going to do for the shoes as well. Now for the shoes, I did pretty much the same thing I did for the bodice. I wrapped the model, or my boot in this case, in saran wrap and then covered it in tape and drew on the design. Once I had the design that I liked and the dimensions were right, I cut it out and made a pattern from it. Remember, you only need to draw half of the design because then you can easily mirror it to make the other side of the boot, or pretty much any other design that goes for this. And also keep a lot of images handy of what you're drawing, because this stuff is crazy. Once the pattern pieces were ready, I moved to the foam. The majority of the foam that's on the boots is 2mm foam, not 4mm foam, because I knew it had to go over a lot of curves and be able to bend well with my feet because I'm walking in it. So I made the foam with less. It turned out working out it was a really good decision that I decided to do. I would suggest that for the knees and up higher on the leg, I upped the foam to the 4mm. But for here, just use the 2mm, and I'm using my Olfa snap-off blade to cut it out. Here, I'm going ahead and starting to heat form the wrist pieces to the weird shape that she has, which is kind of like off of her arm, but not really on her arm. It's a very weird piece of armor, but I did my best. The tool that you're seeing that I'm using is just like a jewelry stand that I bought off a friend that works really good for kind of help getting those curves in foam and making them stay once they cool. To get those exact details that she has on her armor, I used tracing paper, drew out the details, and then cut the tracing paper and then put it on some foam to kind of help make those details nice and sharp, because hand drawing those I wasn't too confident on just on foam, so I went ahead and did it on the tracing paper first, which turned out to be a really smart idea. Once all of the details were cut out of the smaller foam, I went ahead and glued it on using contact cement. Using my handy dandy quick seal to cover up all those little cracks in the foam that I had to use or that were there because I, cut them out of foam. So, gosh, I love this stuff so much. After the wrist armor was done, I moved to the knee. Right here, you're just seeing me draw out some of the details that the knees would have. Okay, here is the knee pieces look right now. That was a lot of patterning with the foam. Trust me, take some time with this. I didn't want to show it all because it would have lasted a million years. But once I had the knees done and all the other pieces done for the foot, for the feet and the wrist, I plasti dipped them in black, 2 layers, and then started to paint them with the same acrylic paint methods that I used for the shoulder pieces. I really, really loved the way my boots turned out, and I think it's all because of this crazy detailing that I did that took forever on. Once all the paint was dry, it's time to apply everything to the boots. I used contact cement and just carefully glued everything to these boots that I thrifted off of threadup.com, which I highly suggest for all your cosplay needs for clothes because it is secondhand, and using secondhand stuff is always a much better way to use for cosplay stuff besides just going out and buying stuff new. So I highly recommend threadup. That's where I got these awesome boots that I just love. Man, these boots turned out so great. Once everything was glued and or taped down, I went ahead and just took a quick Mod Podge layer of sealer over the boots and the wrist armor and everything else that's pretty much just foam to make sure all that foam is sealed and ready to go. Once these boots were done, I was done with my outfit except for the mask, which you'll see next week.
Okay, so the bodice is made. The last thing I want to talk about is this random cape that I decided to add. This is an embroidered piece that I did separately and then later stitched onto this cape just to give it a little pizzazz, a little zhuzh. She is Princess of Edenia and now complete ruler of Outworld. Spoilers, sorry guys. But I just love this Mortal Kombat symbol that I was able to bead onto and then attach to this back cape just to give it a little flow and coolness. Okay, so the outfit is done. I love this outfit. I love wearing it. I feel so powerful in it. It feels so awesome. Now that being said, there were a lot of things I would have done differently, honestly. Really would have done differently. But it's okay, we're not gonna hash into that because this is like almost our already year-old costume. One thing I really did love were the boots. I thought they turned out really awesome. I was very, very proud of those. Please join me next week for part 3 of the Kitana making series where I make her mask. If you loved this video, please like and share with all your other Mortal Kombat and cosplay friends. And don't forget to sub to my channel. I record and post all of my progress for pretty much all of my cosplays that I make right here on my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next week.